Child labor is a global issue because it is very harmful. According to childlaborphotoprojects.org, it states many children in hazardous and dangerous jobs are in danger of injury and even death.
People should care about child labor because children should not be working on the field.
Children should be playing outside and getting an education.
Child labor This is why people should care about child labor.
Many people don't believe that child labor exists, but child labor is a global issue that harms kids all over the globe. According to the article ILO Conventions on the Worst Forms of Child Labor, it states that a majority of countries have adopted legislation to prohibit or place severe restrictions on the employment and working of children, much of it stimulated and guided by standards adopted by the International Labor. People all over the globe are demonstrating that it is a global problem. According to the article ILO Conventions and Recommendations on Child Labor, it states that, nevertheless, the basic of determined and considered actions which sets the total elimination of child labor as the ultimate goal of policy. Child labor can be minimized by making it against the law. Governments are trying to eliminate child labor by placing certain policies that can help end it. Child labor is a demonstration of a problem all over the world and should be strengthened by placing laws and descriptions on why child labor is harmful. The ILO Conventions and Recommendations on Child Labor, it states people all over the world help to focus the international spotlight of the urgency of action to eliminate as a priority of the worst forms of child labor, without the long-term goal of the effect of child labor. This shows that people are trying to eliminate the worst forms of child labor because they want to protect children. Child labor makes children victims of mental, emotional, and physical abuse. All child labor can harm the children who are working. According to the article, What is Child Labor? It states that the term child labor is often defined as work that deprives children of their potential and their dignity, and that is harmful to physical and mental development. This is important because mental abuse can lead to depression, and depression can lead to suicide. Hitting is part of the physical abuse that occurs in places that use child labor. Child labor is also harmful to the young because it damages the child mentally. According to the article What is Child Labor? It states, in its most extreme forms, child labor involves children being enslaved, separated from their families, exposed to serious hazards and illnesses, and are left to fend for themselves on the streets of large cities, often at a very early age. This is important because children are being used as slaves and are being taken away from their families, placed in dangerous places, and exposed to dangerous chemicals. Children all over the world are being forced or manipulated into child labor and don't have a decent childhood. According to ILO Conventions and Recommendations on Child Labor, it states any work which is likely to jeopardize children's physical, mental, or moral health, safety, or morals, and should not be done by anyone under the age of 18. This means that children's health and lives are at risk because they are working at an early age. We should care more about child labor because children are being abused mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Child labor is an issue that happens all over the world, but in some places it happens more often than others. Child labor happens in countries that are...
Any form of child labor is harmful because children don't enjoy their childhood. Children don't enjoy their childhood because they don't eat properly and play with other children. According to Regulation of Child, it states that The child shall enjoy special protection and be given the opportunity and physically to develop physically, mentally, morally, especially and socially. This is important because there are rules and laws that protect children from being abused and hurt. Children are also left alone on streets of large cities at a very early age, according to what is child labor. In its most extreme forms, child labor involves children being enslaved, separated from their families, exposed to serious hazards and illnesses, and or left to fend from themselves on streets of large cities, often at a very early age. This shows that children are being put in dangerous places where they can get sick and miss out on education and can also harm children. According to what Can You Stop Child Labor in its states, on the child labor, 86% do not receive any education. When children are exposed, they are exploited and abused, and it affects their health as well as their overall development. This shows that child labor can take advantage of abused children in many ways, like taking them away from their family and their education. All forms of child labor are harmful because children don't enjoy their childhood.
Child labor is an issue that happens all over the world, but in some places happens more often than others. Child labor happens in countries that are poor, such as El Salvador, Mexico, and Guatemala. According to a new shot, in 1999, the International Labor Organization pointed out that child labor affects over 250 million children, 30% of which are in Latin America. This is important for us to know because most of our classmates come from Latin American countries that are poor. Asia and the Pacific have the highest rate of child labor that may come from Latin American countries or foreign poor countries. According to www.ilo.org, Asia and the Pacific have the most population of child labor, almost 78 million or 9.3% of child labor population. This is important to know because there are higher rates of child labor in the east side of the world. Asia and the Pacific have high child labor rates, but Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean and the Middle East also have high rates of child labor. www.ilo.org states there are 13 million, 8.8% of children in child labor in Latin America and the Caribbean and the Middle East and North Africa.